So, this is the totally optional, don't watch it if you don't want to, Meet the Instructor lecture. My name is Tim Dr. T. Shamillard, and I grew up in Massachusetts before I went off to Georgia Tech for a bachelor's in electrical engineering. However, I only stayed there for 1 year. The question is why. So go ahead and take an in-lecture quiz to see if you can guess why. Yes, it was for the love of a good woman, though money was a part of it too. So after I left Georgia Tech, I spent about 1.5 years, mostly, putting stuff into boxes and handing them to the UPS guy. I realized that probably wasn't the life choice that I wanted to make, so I enlisted in the U.S. Air Force, went off to basic training, and then to technical training school. I got married 4 months after enlisting in the Air Force. So your next in-lecture quiz is, did I marry the same woman? Yes or no? Yes, it was the same woman, and we're still married. So my first assignment was in Omaha, Nebraska, but I only spent 16 months there. And after 16 months, I got sent off to get a bachelor's degree at Georgia Tech in electrical engineering. So I managed to get my bachelor's degree after all, went off to officer training school, and got my commission in the Air Force. My first assignment as an officer was in Los Angeles, where I spent 4 years managing contractors who were developing software to fly satellites. While we were in Los Angeles, we had our first 2 children, both boys. My oldest son got a degree in computer science and is now working as a software engineer. And my other son is working as a manager in a retail store. While I was in Los Angeles, I also got my master's degree in computer engineering at the University of Southern California. And I did that nights. And for those of you who have done degrees nights, especially with 2 small children, wow, that's a hard thing to do. After we left Los Angeles, we went to the U.S. Air Force Academy for 2 years, where I taught a variety of undergraduate computer science courses. While we were there, we had our 3rd child, a girl, and she's working part-time, and she's also an author. So she's self-published a collection of short stories, and she's written a novel that she's looking for a publisher for. Now, the Air Force Academy is usually a 4-year tour, but I was only there for 2 years. Another in-lecture quiz. Why did I leave after 2 years? Okay, so off I went to UMass Amherst to get a PhD in computer science. So that means I'm a doctor, but not the kind who helps people. And my kids loved the part in Treasure Planet where the non-medical doctor says that he just sits around and does nothing. Because we went to that movie as a family in a theater, and at that point in the movie, every single member of my family turned and looked at me. After I finished my PhD at UMass, I went back to the Air Force Academy, and this time I did do a 4-year tour. And then finally, I went to Washington, D.C., where I spent a couple years managing contractors who were developing databases and web applications. And then I reached 20 years in the Air Force and retired. I've been at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs since January of 2003. When I first got there, I was teaching graduate-level software engineering courses, as well as undergraduate-level computer science courses and game design and development courses. And you'll hear me say GDD a lot. That stands for game design and development. At this point, I'm exclusively teaching undergraduate GDD courses. And in fall of 2007, I started up a bachelor's degree in game design and development, and I'm the program director for that degree. I also spent 5.5 years as an indie game developer in a company that I started with my 2 sons, those 2 sons that I mentioned earlier. The computer scientist, clearly a programmer. My other son, an artist. He did a huge amount of the art and music in the games we worked on as a company. So the games we worked on as a company, we did some commercial stuff. So the left 2 images here are Cat, a game that we released commercially several years ago. It's actually a real board game, and we licensed the rights to do the video game version from the company. And the one on the upper right is a game that we did not get all the way to release. We've actually since shut the company down, since both of my sons got older and got jobs and moved out and no longer really did the company work with me anymore. And so the company is no longer in existence. But that upper right image is for a game called Battle Paddles that we probably got 90% done before we shut down. And if you want to think Pong with weapons, that's what that game was. You can actually go download Ket for free from the Burning Teddy website, and you can just play the single local computer version on your computer for free. While we were a company, we also got some commercial work. We did some for-contract, work-for-hire stuff. So the left two images are games for 8th graders to learn about science. And the upper right image is a game that we built for 4th graders to actually learn about Colorado history. So most of the games we built as a company, not including the Colorado history game, all the other games we worked on, we used C# and XNA Game Studio to build those games. And finally, my first love is cycling. So, well, maybe programming, but cycling as well. So this blue bike over here is my oldest bike, and I've used that to ride a number of centuries, which are 100-mile bike rides. So that's a long way to go. I had a friend take me mountain biking once, and the very next day I went off and bought that mountain bike. So I use that for commuting to work, at least on occasion, and just riding the trails when I get a chance. And finally, this bike over here is my triathlon bike. So I did those centuries, something happened to my brain, I started running marathons, I realized that it was crazy to only do 2 out of the 3 for triathlons. So I've done a variety of triathlons, all the way from sprint to 1 Ironman distance race, which takes a long darn time. I also, however, play some games, and so you should go take an in-lecture quiz to try to guess what kind of games I play. So that's a Lotus 49 on Assetto Corsa, an awesome driving game on Steam. And that is my gaming rig with an Intel i7 processor, a 6 gig graphics card, and all kinds of pretty lights. And here is my driving rig. So that is a Playseat seat, and that wheelbase is from Fanatic, and the steering wheel attached to it right now is a Rally steering wheel. And I say the wheel attached to it right now because that's actually a quick release wheel, so I can just pop that Rally wheel off when I want to and put on my F1 wheel instead when I'm getting ready to race F1. Over here is my shifter and handbrake combo. So obviously the handbrake is the one on the right for when I'm rallying, so I can do a Swedish flick, or it helps with drifting as well. The shifter can be a 7-speed 8 shifter, and if I want to change it over to sequential shifting, there's a switch on the side, and then it's a sequential shifter, and that's of course how I have it set up right now for rallying. And then finally we have the 3 pedals, so obviously gas, brake, and clutch. The gas pedal is adjustable for the tension on the gas pedal with that spring that you see behind it. The brake is in fact a hydraulic brake setup, so this is a hydraulic chamber and I have fluid in there so it feels like a real hydraulic brake. This is also a spinner, so when I push the brake really hard and I'm driving a car with ABS, it actually shakes the brake pedal for me, because that's what happens when you slam on the brakes with ABS. And the clutch brakes properly as well, and so that is the driving setup I use to play my racing games. So that's who I am, some of the things I've done, and some of the things I continue to do, so that you sort of have a better sense of who's talking to you throughout the course. Cheers.